Well, Muriel, welcome.
Happy to have you here, Larry.
At your house. Very nice house, I might add. Muriel, when and where were you born?
I was born November 30th, 1923, in St. Joseph's Hospital in Yonkers, New York, Westchester County.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
No. My mother said that one was enough.
One was enough. You were all the family she needed. What were your parents' names, and when were they born?
Mother was May Veronica Lennox, married my dad, James McCarthy. My dad passed away at 86 years of age. Don't know when he came into this world, I'm sorry, and my mother lived to be 90.
90,
So she was born in 1904.
Okay, and she died in 94, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And what were your parents' occupations?
Well, besides being a housewife, of course,
Yeah.
Mother was a big volunteer at the hospital, and I believe she met my dad when she was a young girl going to work. I think he was driving a trolley car, and he saw this gorgeous girl on the corner every day, pick her up, and finally they got together. And but Dad, later on, of course, I think he was in the, worked with Sinclair Lewis Company. And of course was in World War I. Cavalry. Handsome devil. Pictures of him on his horse and all that, you know.
So would you think he was born in the 1890s?
Yeah, had to be. Well, he was 6 years older than my mother.
So he was born in 98.
Okay, that's it.
98.
Math was my major, English was my major, not math.
Well, if he lived to be 86, then he probably died in 84.
Okay.
And that would have been, you said he worked for a company. What?
Sinclair Lewis Oil
is that?
Company. Oil company, the big oil company years
Sinclair
ago.
with the dinosaur.
Uh-huh.
That's Sinclair.
And then he was in business for himself many years later. He had a couple of taverns in Beacon and Wappingers Falls. The working man's hangout, you know.
Yeah.
Not the Ritz-Carlton.
No, that's okay. The Ritz-Carlton would have been a bigger struggle, I'm sure. Did you know your grandparents?
Yes, I knew my father's mother, May White. Of course, she was born in Ireland, in County Cork. I didn't know my father's dad. He passed away when I was too young to know him. And my mother's mother, my grandmother, Florence Newton Lennox, living saint.
Yeah.
Loved her.
And was she born in the United States?
Yes, she was born in Connecticut, I believe.
And
I never met her parents.
What was her husband's name? Do you remember?
Yeah, my mother's father was James.
James Lennox.
Yeah, I don't know his middle name.
And what about your father's father?
James Martin McCarthy.
James Martin McCarthy. Can you tell me anything about your grandparents? Anything special that you remember, even as a little girl?
Well, I remember my father's mother as being a very Irish, white-haired, kind of the head of the household type of Irish lady. And she had 7 children. And one of my memories of her is Father Cletus, her youngest son, priest, was always honored at all occasions. You know, Father Cletus, the Capuchin order, he's in town, we all got together. And there was a pillow that I carried to the altar when he said his first Mass. That's a Capuchin tradition.
Yeah.
And this pillow is all embroidered and everything by the nuns. And of course it has the history of Father Cletus McCarthy, Capuchin's first Mass. And it was a big honor because I was the little girl chosen as a bride, dressed as a bride, carried the pillow to the altar, And that was a big honor in those days, if you remember, because girls were not allowed beyond the altar rail.
Yeah, right.
And so that was presented, that pillow was above the piano in my his mother's house for years, and I could see that. So when he celebrated perhaps his 40th year in the priesthood, it was given to his oldest sister, because my grandmother passed away or something. And then finally it came down to me.
Oh, you got it?
I have it. It's hanging in my front hall.
Oh, no kidding. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about your family farther back than your grandparents?
I have some pictures of the way they are, so stilted and never smiled and that sort of thing. But actually, people fail to put any names on the back or any dates. So there's not much I can tell about them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, half of your family was in Ireland beyond your grandparents.
Yes. Well, my dad came over when he was about 8.
Oh, okay.
And everybody was born in Ireland on my dad's side except Father Cletus. He was born here.
What is your ethnic origin? What is your personal ethnic origin?
Well, Irish.
Irish a lot,
From the my mother's mother was English and German. And one of the most interesting things that I remember growing up, you just take it all for granted. I never remember my grandmother not going to church or that she didn't go to church with us on Sunday. I just thought she was a Catholic like all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, she was not Catholic. She promised to bring her children up Catholic, and she did, although she was left a widow when she was in her late 20s. And through her whole life, she did what she had promised to do.
That's awesome. That's great. So are you like 99% Irish?
Oh, well,
then,
well, maybe that stretches it a little bit because my mother's mother was English and German. And, but it was all Irish on my dad's side.
How has being Irish affected your life, do you think?
Well, you notice on my front door, there's a little tile that says, "Thank God I'm Irish."
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I think I've always been proud of being Irish.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up to know that they weren't welcome in Boston.
Especially, and that's interesting since that's probably where there are more Irish than anywhere.
Right.
Is there anything else you can share with me about your family history? Any unusual events or famous persons? Or is your family known for anything special or anything like that?
Well, I guess the Irish are drinkers.
Yeah, well, that's not just your family.
No, I don't think I have anybody that, well, you know, oh gosh, yes, if you're a Democrat, my father's sister Marie was a staunch Democrat who went to the representative of her state or something. You know,
Oh,
I can
really?
remember that because I think I was in high school when she took me along. And politics is always a big thing with the Irish,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, power. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
the
right.
policeman or the yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the thing you remember is of the duty they did for their country, and you know, the men were so proud. Like my dad was cavalry, his brother was Navy, and all these pictures that they had in the big frames on the wall of their uniformed men, and you know, you just grow up. It's a whole different world now.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to give respect to others like they did years ago.
What is your full name?
Muriel Cleta Kathleen McCarthy Brennan. Cleta comes from Father Cletus,
Okay.
the feminine for Cletus. And actually Cletus was not baptized Cletus, he was Michael. But in the order they give a name.
Oh, they okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that's special about your name? How you were named? Why your mother named you Muriel? Or is there?
I hate to fib on my mother. She didn't have enough of an imagination. Her favorite sister-in-law was Agnes. And Agnes had a girl about maybe 4 or 5 years older than I, and her name was Muriel Brennan. Can you believe it? I guess she wasn't to be outdone, so she's going to get that special blessing from being with Father Cletus as the end of the family. And incidentally, Aunt Agnes married a Goldberg, Jack Goldberg, who was a very successful furniture owner in Yonkers, New York. And of course, when the Jew and the Catholic got together, it was the Jewish family said, ostracize you, you no longer are one of us. But at the 50th wedding anniversary, we filled the hall with the Irish and the Jews.
That's good. Yeah, I think you outgrow those things.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Muriel, I'd like you to think back to the earliest thing that you can remember. How old were you, and what was going on?
Oh, my earliest memory?
Yeah, your earliest memory as a little girl. What is the memory, and what was it that was going on around you in this memory?
Well, I really don't think I remember much before actually kindergarten. I think that's from pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I had the, what do you call those symbols?
Yeah.
Picture of me in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And then first grade, I went to boarding school. And I was taught by the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. I believe they came from France, and they taught us French in the first grade. Mm. So I remember my number was 32 on all my silver, my linens and everything, and very, very vivid memories of the boarding school.
How long were you there?
3 years.
3 years?
Mm-hmm. First, second, third grade. Then we moved to Poughkeepsie. And then I attended a Catholic day school, St. Mary's.
So you really have no memories of before school, before you were
No, I really don't. Only what you might have heard, you know.
Yeah.
But not, I don't think people are capable of remembering from the birth canal to the whatever.
Yeah.
Do you have memories like that?
No, I don't. But my children remember things when they were 3 for some reason.
Really?
3 and 4. Yeah.
Well, perhaps if I'd had a brother or sister, there might have been
That's right.
memories, but
Yeah.
I was the only child.
That's true, because most of their youngest memories are about their
Sharing,
siblings.
yeah.
Where did you live when you were little? Where did you live? You lived in
Yonkers, New York.
Yonkers, New York. And what did your house look like? Can you explain it to me?
Well, I don't remember a house there at all, because we moved in third grade. I think, you know, that's a suburb of New York City.
Right, just north.
Very residential, of course, and I think we lived in an apartment building. I don't really remember a house. But then when we came in, I think when I left Blessed Sacrament Academy, I think we had a half a year still, in Yonkers, and I do remember some sort of a, play area there. But I couldn't tell you anything about what the place looked like.
Yeah, it's like there was no white picket fence or anything. No, you have a recollection.
But no, I remember beyond that, Poughkeepsie I remember very well. It's funny when you think back and you think about a street you lived on, mm-hmm. and you think, oh, that was a long way down that block. Then you go back later and you say, it's right there.
Right there.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody has that experience from what I've been told.
Oh yeah, just going back into your school and thinking, oh my God, this is so much smaller than I remember it being.
Yeah.
But, so where did you go to elementary school, and what year did you start?
Well, elementary school, I said I went to boarding school.
What was the name of it?
Blessed Sacrament Academy on Park Avenue, Yonkers, New York.
It was right there in...
And it was cloistered nuns.
What does that mean?
Oh my God. They do not see the outside world. They're just enclosed in where they live. It's like going to confession. This building is magnificent, this school. I have a beautiful picture right on the Hudson River. And when I would be taken back, I came home on weekends. And Sunday night when I'd be taken back to school, these magnificent big mahogany type doors open up. And this little slat, like going to confession,
Mm-hmm.
and the nun sees who's there, and out comes the hand, and in goes Muriel.
Is that right? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And
I
an awful lot of
do
people
that.
say, how could you, it was probably one of the nicest things that I could have experienced, being with all these nuns, that it was their choice in life to devote to the children.
Was it all girls?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'd like you to think back to an incident in grade school that you would remember.
Oh, dear.
What was going on?
I hated rhubarb.
Uh-huh.
And we all sat at tables for all of our meals. And rhubarb was probably inexpensive at the time. I don't know why I didn't like it. And one day I feel this pull on my collar. And it's the nun standing behind me. And she says, "You'll be eating that rhubarb, whatever." And she caught me passing it. I was passing it across the table.
Uh-huh.
So I was told I'd eat the rhubarb. I don't think I ever ate rhubarb again until maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I tried it with strawberry rhubarb pie.
How'd you like it this time?
I could tolerate it.
Thanks for the strawberries.
But that is really something that really stayed with me.
Do you have any other vivid memories of elementary school, even beyond your third grade? I mean, where did you go after third grade?
We moved to Poughkeepsie, New York,
Poughkeepsie, just
Yeah.
another.
and it was a day school, regular Catholic school, and Dominican nuns.
What was the name of that school? Do you remember?
St. Mary's,
St. Mary's.
and I was very comfortable there.
Again, was it all girls, or is this,
No,
this was
that was
boys and girls?
but the boys were on one side of the courtyard and the girls
Yeah.
on the other. And there was Catherine Corbley, Mary Mulvey, Geraldine Mabey, and Florence Fiore, and Muriel McCarthy. And we were the elite.
And
Yeah.
did were you there till your 8th grade?
Yes.
So you were there for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
And what do you have any special memories of those other than being one of the girls to know?
Well, it was a little hard time in my life, though, because my mother and dad got divorced.
Okay.
And back in those days, boy, that was like,
Yeah, you had to go to Reno.
they talk about, no, you had to go to the Pope.
Mhm.
Well, for a dispensation. But I think possibly because I knew I was just a little bit out of it in that respect, without realizing it, I think I was determined to prove something or other, because I always seemed to be very independent. I wasn't going to let anybody know it hurt.
I see. So you buried those feelings.
Yeah, I think so.
What grade were you in when this all when the parents?
I would guess I was 4th grade.
Okay, so this was really right after. This is just when you moved,
Right.
right? Is that why you moved to Poughkeepsie? Was it over the?
No, they were still living together.
Oh.
We had a year there. Uh-huh.
How were your grades in school?
You dare ask.
I mean, I just got to hear the answer. We can't assume anything.
Oh, I was always an honor student.
Were you?
Yeah, sure. Well, the nuns are good teachers.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean, Larry. I think I might have striven harder because there was a reason to be just, looked upon as
Mhm.
tough that you. But there weren't anybody in those days getting divorced.
No, it was not an easy decision to make at any
No.
time. Yeah, right. How did you spend your summers during this time?
Grammar school days?
Yeah.
Well, very simple, I guess. Picnics, and I remember one year, though, they sent me off to Rhinebeck, New York, to not a camp like you have today, but some farm place where they had kids come out for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Paid to go there and everything. But I think my grandmother, somebody came up one Sunday to visit and said, "This isn't where she's staying."
Oh, really? And they
So
took you
I
over there?
didn't stay there very long, yeah. I don't remember Oh, not great grammar school, but high school. I used to go to the beach in Connecticut. My father's family, one of his sisters, the favorite aunt, Agnes, owned a summer place up there.
Oh,
Had some wonderful times in high school at the beach. And then my own family owned a cottage at Henderson Harbor in Lake Ontario.
Mm.
That was later, much later, when college married time. Mm-hmm.
And did you have any pets when you were little?
I remember one collie dog,
Yeah.
and I remember my dad had a big German Shepherd at one of his places of business, and I never liked those big dogs. That must have been, more of a watchdog.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my mother was far too clean to want pets.
So
Honestly.
you wanted the hair around
Honestly,
her,
but the last little dog we had was one that actually I bought it for Maureen as a birthday present when she was about 10,
Mm-hmm.
but he found out that he liked Jim better, so it was Jimmy's dog.
It was Jim's dog. Yeah. While you were growing up, did you have any sense of whether your family was rich or poor? And what would you say now about your family's economic circumstances at that time?
We talked about that recently with the boys being here with me. I think at that time, no, we certainly weren't poor, but we weren't rich.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how could I think I was deprived of anything if I'm in a boarding school and I have
Right.
all the things that you need to have? Plus, if your mom and dad are divorced, dad always manages to show up with a bicycle or something,
Oh, yeah.
And I would say that, as I mentioned to you, some of the girls' names, I was very much aware that Catherine Corbley's father was a judge. And, there was that esteem there. But we all had our little girl birthday parties, and nobody had to outshine the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Just a happy middle class life.
Were you happy as a child?
I would have to wonder about what happy means. I probably felt a little spoiled because there wasn't anybody that I ever had to give in to, But happy, I have a cousin that I remember, Elsie Sands. She's really a distant cousin. And I'll never forget, she said to me one time, Muriel, you don't smile a lot. But I can't explain that to you, but she just said that to me, you don't smile a lot.
See, I don't get that sense at all.
So maybe I was serious,
As a, yeah. Well, you've already said you were very determined to not let anybody know that you were hurting inside, so you maybe got real used to faking it.
Well, I don't know. But I certainly didn't have any reason, to be unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you say about your relationship with your mom and your father? Actually.
Well, that's kind of hard to explain the background I had. I think I was closer to my grandmother
Than your mom?
for some of my life, because after the divorce, my mother went to work and we lived with my grandmother. And I think perhaps I just looked up to her a lot because of the fact that she had raised her own children without a father, because of death and everything. And not that I had a wonderful mother. I mean, I was very proud of her. She was a lovely lady, always a lady, But mother was like Miss Perfection. My favorite cousin, Bud, who was about 29 days older than I, our mothers were great bridge players. So we'd have to go to the group, and play with each other throughout the day and stuff, And I remember them saying years later, well, you always came dressed like you were going to a party. Mother was very into that. But I think years ago, children didn't, they took more pride in how everybody looked. I mean, sometimes don't you just go to church now and you think, oh my God,
T-shirts and shirts.
Yeah.
What about your dad? What kind of relationship?
Dapper
did you have
Dan.
with him?
My father was Dapper Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously not a close relationship as I was young, when I was young. How could we be? And boarding school, saw him weekends, but probably not even that much. But many years down the road, he said to me, you know, Muriel, I'm doing for your children what I didn't do for you.
Oh. So he knew. Yeah.
But I said to my kids today, I said, I remember my dad was in California when I was in high school for a long period of time. And I was graduation night, and to my surprise, he came walking through.
Okay.
So he was a good dad.
Yeah.
You know, he supported me and everything, but not the relationship that, well, don't you think 2 years ago men were not close to their children like they are today?
Yeah, I think that there was a very defined thing. They were supposed to go out and make the money, and the mothers
Yeah.
were supposed to mother the
I remember he'd come and take me to the Rhinebeck Fair, and he'd do things like that, which was what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly different today.
Yes.
Of course, I also have to tell you, I remember being a tap dancer.
You did?
You know,
Oh,
you
in
try
grammar
to.
school?
Uh,
I mean, when you were that
no,
young?
no. I guess that would have been.
High school, maybe?
That would have been. What would that have been? High school, yeah. I say it laughingly because all the little girls took dancing lessons, you know, and I remember that part of my. When you think back to things you could recall, you know,
Yes.
crazy little things.
That's
Yeah.
good. Did you perform?
Well, of course, we were in little
Like
recitals, you know.
stuff? Yeah.
They didn't hire me on Broadway, but I.
Where and in what years did you go to high school?
Well, I graduated in I graduated at 17, so born in 1923.
40? You graduated
Yeah.
in 40, so you were there
40.
from 36 to 40.
Right.
And where did you live during that time?
High school?
Yeah, what city was the family in?
Pleasant Valley, New York, which is outside of Poughkeepsie
Okay.
suburb.
Now I'd like you to think back to an incident in high school which you remember well, and don't say tap dancing because we've already touched on that one.
High school?
Yeah.
Well, what can I remember? The debating club. Well, back in those days, you didn't date young.
Did the boys have cars even?
No. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, Donald Perkins had a car.
With a rumble seat?
No. No. I don't think of anything particularly out. I mean, I was an honor student. I was active in all the things that we did at school. And I especially enjoyed traveling with the debating societies around the state, you know, contests and stuff. And dancing didn't become a big thing on dates until probably junior high was my first dance. Oh yeah, now I remember. I almost remember what I wore.
Did
Yeah,
you really?
yeah, it's coming to me now. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you wear?
Well, of course, we wore long dresses, lovely
Yeah.
gowns, flimsy, chiffon. Yeah. And oh, another thing I can remember is that my mother and my dad both allowed me to have a Tom Collins if I had to have a drink sometime.
Tom Collins.
Kind
It
of
was
strange.
a summer drink, right?
Kind of strange that they would
Yeah.
even do that, huh? Where now it would probably be wine or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Tom Collins was a very fruity drink, really, at the time.
Yeah,
With
right.
Sugar in it.
Right.
When you went to the dance in high school, and I'm thinking about those years.
Mm-hmm. We
It
had little
was-
dance carts.
Right, but where was it? It was live music, right? Was it a live band? Maybe even high school kids that were playing, or was it? Because in those days, wasn't that the
It
beginning
had to
of
be.
the big band? Was
Oh,
just
yeah.
coming?
And if college was a big band.
Right. Well, in the 40s, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the interesting part of it was you had this little program, and the boys would come over and sign for dance 3 or dance 4.
Right.
Yes.
What social group did you belong to in school? Well, you said you were obviously probably.
Well, let's go. Don't forget, we're in a Catholic school. They don't have a lot of flourishes.
Right.
Ithaca College, I belonged to Delta Phi Zeta. I majored in the English drama department. Ithaca College started out as a conservatory of music, and then they had a physical ed college, and then
Now you're in college now. Not in high school. Okay.
High school, as I say, I just was in anything that they had around us, we did. I wasn't, I probably held an office in one of the classes. Everybody does, you know.
Right.
Nobody wants to be secretary, they make you secretary.
What was your best friends, who were your best friends during high school? Do you remember any of them?
High school?
Yeah, high school. Boys or girls and both?
Yeah. Donald Perkins was a boyfriend.
Okay.
Tommy Flanagan was a boyfriend. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we were a big crowd of us, really. Barbara Plass and...
Did you stay in contact with any of them?
We didn't have a high school reunion for something like 27 years.
Oh, really? And then you had one?
And then it was held in Poughkeepsie, and the boy who would be least remembered, he'd be the, whatever you call him today, like, you know.
Yeah.
He had the franchise for the Holiday Inn where we had our get-together, and he had a beautiful blonde ex-model wife. And I thought, now here that kid, we never paid any attention to him. And he turns out to be Moneybags at the end of the rainbow. Yeah.
Were you on any teams, sports-wise? I know you were on the debate team.
Oh, no, I was not athletic.
No, not athletic?
No. Played just a little tennis with friends or something like that, but no.
No, I'm saying.
No.
Who was the first...
Don't forget, I was an only child, and my mother would be afraid I'd get hurt.
Oh, yeah, very protective, of course. Yeah.
No, it just wasn't in my genes, I guess.
Who was the first boy you seriously kissed? How old were you, and what were the circumstances?
I would have no idea who I forgot one fellow. He was real good looking. Ralph Adams. Yeah, Ralph Adams. Oh, and I dated in high school the adopted son of the president of Vassar College. That was high style. You get invited over there for dinner, and you know you're Vassar College. The dining room of the president of Vassar College. Yeah, and first kiss couldn't have been much because I don't remember it.
You don't remember your first kiss, huh?
It was probably Spin the Bottle.
Oh, okay. Well, then that would have been forgettable. Yeah. That would have been the circumstances. Isn't that interesting?
I don't know how interesting, but...
Did you go to your senior prom?
Of course.
And who was your date? Is it Don?
It had to be Don Perkins. He was the one who had a LaSalle.
He had a car. That would have made me more nervous than anything if I was your mom. What was that date like? Do you remember?
What was it, what?
What was it like, the senior prom? Was it...
Oh, gosh, what did they do? Ribbons and all that stuff and tables and...
Was it in the gym? Or?
Oh, yes, in the gym, yeah. Yes, they didn't go out with tuxedos and all that stuff today.
If you could have changed one thing about your high school years, what would you have changed? What would it have been?
Gee, I don't know. I was perfectly happy in high school. What would I have changed?
Maybe nothing.
That would be a hard question to really sincerely answer.
Yeah, okay.
You know.
That's a good answer because obviously you had a very contented and happy high school years. And you during this time were you still living with your mom at your grandmother's?
My mother had remarried.
Oh, she did. Okay.
When
did that happen?
When I was in 7th grade.
Oh, okay. And still in Poughkeepsie, obviously,
yes.
or right outside.
Right.
And did your father also remarry during that time?
Much later.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember quite when. And he married a lovely lady. They were married for 40 years without ever having a cross word with me or anybody else.
What, so to sum it up, you would say, how would you sum up your childhood, your adolescence? I mean, just in a nutshell.
The only thing lacking would have been the perfect mom and dad home.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I was blessed to have good health. My grandmother was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody, I had a very, nobody's going to say, hey, it was perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is yours perfect?
No.
There you go. So sum it up is to say, you know, just count your blessings. I've tried to learn to do that.
Okay, I'm going to shift gears for a moment and ask you about the war. You already told me about World War I, that your father was actually in World War I.
Mm-hmm.
What impact, if any, did the Depression have on your family?
Well, people always talked about the Depression. We grew up in Depression years. Well, there again, I'm in a boarding school. It can't be free.
Right.
And I don't remember. I remember someone saying, you know, somebody, a distant relative or something, one time talking about having lost, the banks closed and they lost their money, but it didn't affect me in my home or where I was. Certainly we weren't wealthy, as I keep impressing you upon that, but Depression...
Well, your father was in a business that he was in oil, right?
Well, at that time
Well, actually, you may...
No, during the... Oh, I don't know. I was too young to be... Yeah, he was working. He had a job.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. We wouldn't have been affected by that, I guess. Maybe they were. Maybe they wanted for things that they couldn't have, but I don't ever remember... I think they had a car and everything, you know. And when you think about it, when I was in college, we didn't have cars because there was a war on. We couldn't have them.
Yeah, there's always steel. In fact, that's where I want to go right now, is back to the subject, your education.
Excuse me.
What college did you go to?
Ithaca College.
And why did you choose to go there? And what did you study?
Influenced by my high school teachers.
Okay. And what did you
My
study?
English teacher and my physical ed teacher were both from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated from there. And of course it was near home. And people didn't go out of state and travel so far in those days.
Right. And what did you study?
Majored in English and drama, speech, planned to teach speech and that sort of thing.
And how'd you do in college?
I only went 2 years.
Okay.
The war came along and that handsome Irishman showed up. And he was Irish Catholic. What more could you ask?
How did you pay for college?
Well, it was very, very costly.
Uh-huh.
Something like $400.
Well, it's all relative. It's all
semester.
relative, isn't it?
Yeah. My tuition was paid for by my family, and I worked for board and room part-time in a secretarial job in the Conservatory of Music, you know, filing and typing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But most everybody I knew worked for a little bit in college in those days.
Mm-hmm. Now I'd like you to think back to an incident in college which you might remember well. In the couple years you were there, like, who were your best friends from this period of time? Do you remember any college?
Yes, I'm still very friendly with Helen Smith. My sophomore year of college is a big thrill. You're going to be a big sister. Freshman's coming in and you're going to take her around. So Helen Smith was assigned to me, and come to find out she was married. She wasn't enrolled as a full-time student. She was just taking classes.
Oh, okay.
And we've been friends all these years. And she was from Utica, New York. And then when she married, she After the war, she lived in Potsdam with, her husband was from Potsdam. We had our first kids together. And I had a boy, she had a girl. And I chided her because she had brown shoes on her little girl. And I thought little girls should have white or patent leather shoes. We kid about that to this day, Larry.
Who did you date during this period of your life?
Well, let's see. I dated in high school, in college.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, there wasn't any. Oh, Frank Toomey was my football hero. But I wouldn't call it, really serious dating or anything. We all went out in crowds. And at that time, the ensigns were up at Cornell. So many times we would get together with fraternity parties with big groups. It wasn't really date.
And the war came on about halfway through your, I guess, sophomore year, right?
I remember Pearl Harbor very well.
Pearl Harbor was December of 41.
It was a Sunday. I was coming up the big hill up to my dormitory and went in and found out that we had the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And yes, that changed everything. That's why most of us got married young. It's why the boys weren't around. They went and enlisted. And Frank Toomey, the one that I do recall, I still talk to Frank, by the way. It was very interesting how we got together again many years later. And he went in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
See, they all left.
Yeah.
So it changed everything. That summer I went back to live in Watertown, New York with my mother and stepfather, and got a job at Pine Camp. And that's what changed my life. I met Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Had that war not happened, many of the people that we claim as parents and children today would never have met that way.
Yeah, could have been completely different.
Yeah, very different. So it's one of life's exciting experiences, huh?
Well, it's interesting because the next question that I had was, what impact, if any, did World War II have on your life? And
Huge impact.
It did, yes.
Of course. Yes, and many of my friends, my girlfriends, same thing. Well, let me tell you a little thing about Frank Toomey, though.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see him. He goes off to war, right? Maureen, my third child, makes her first Holy Communion. And we're going to the Persian Terrace for lunch to celebrate. And this is a lovely restaurant, hotel in Syracuse. And I walk in, and there he is in this big dining room, stood up. He recognized me after all these years, and I recognized him. Walked over to talk to him, and he was there as a coach. He was a coach for University of Maryland football team, and he was scouting with a bunch of the fellows up there. So my husband, I'm introducing him, and we go back to our table, and Steve said to me, "Well, why didn't you invite him out to the house?" I said, "Oh, sure." It was the last thing in the world, I think, to do. I mean, how many years had gone by?
Yeah.
So then I never saw him again until his 50th reunion, college reunion, because he was 4 years later graduating than he would have been. And I went to the reunion. And wasn't it nice his wife didn't come? We had such a nice reunion.
Oh,
and so we have kept in touch since then. He calls me Mickey because my roommate in college name was Muriel Bingham. Would you believe? Muriel? So we each had a nickname. She was Mimi and I was a Mickey for McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
So if the phone rings and it's, "Hi, Mickey," then I know it's Frank.
You know it's Frank.
But isn't that a nice little
That's a great
part of
story.
life to remember, huh?
Yeah, meant to be. At least meant to always be there for you. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to move into your adult life now. Let's see if I can pull this back just a little bit. Change that. You okay?
Yep.
Comfortable?
Thank you.
When did you leave home, and under what circumstances did you go?
left home to get married
Okay, and that was
during the war.
during the war. What year would that have been?
Was that, oh golly, 40, well, Lordy.
The war went
40,
on
40,
until 45.
43 was it?
43 would have been the middle of the war, right?
I believe so, yeah. I'm bad on dates.
And,
Yeah.
and where have you lived during your adult life?
Well, if Stephen was here, he could tell you names, addresses, telephone numbers, everything. He claims he was
Yeah.
in I don't know how many grammar schools. Well, because Steve was transferred so often, we kept moving. Now, what was the exact question?
Where have you lived during your adult life?
Most of the time, it was well, we were married in Texas, and then, that was wartime. We traveled a little bit, but we lived in New York State through all of our married life.
And what did you do between the time you left home or graduated from school and the time you got married? But you actually lived at home during that time. What did you? Were you working in the war effort, or were you? I mean, was there a job for you at that time?
No, I got married in started the junior year of college.
Oh, okay.
So I was not ever employed until much later, after I had all the children.
What was your first? So you really never had you didn't have a job after you went from college to marriage.
That's right, as
Yeah.
many women did in those days.
Yeah, sure. Well, here's a question.
Men's lives were much more interesting than women's.
Well, no, I don't know about that. I think this is very interesting. I'm loving this. This is fun. But here's a question I don't know. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but it says here, it's asking, the last time you voted in a presidential election, whom did you vote for and why? And are politics important to you?
You really would have to ask me who I voted for?
You don't have to answer that. Yeah, I know who.
Well, it was not Obama.
It was not Obama, who is our president today.
Correct. And actually, in my young years, my family were Democrats. I can remember that. I mentioned Aunt Marie.
Yeah.
But I guess it was along the way I saw the light, and I've always pretty much voted. Oh, I voted for Kennedy, of course.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Catholic, of course.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I seem to favor the Republican agenda.
Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about your marriage.
That can be painful.
Well, just whatever you want and move on or not. I don't want just the purpose of this is more for you to be comfortable and
Right.
have the best parts of your life. What was your husband's full name, and when did you meet him?
I met Steve on a blind date in Watertown, New York, at Camp Drum, Officers Club dance on a Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Lindsay Brennan.
And what did you do on your first date? It was obviously.
It was a formal dance.
What was your courtship like? Was it long distance? Was he there a lot?
No, we only knew each other. What had we? Probably. I would say we only knew each other 7 or 8 months before we got married. He was transferred from Pine Camp to Texas, and then he came back, and we got engaged, and
Mm-hmm.
it was the typical wartime.
Whirlwind.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How long?
We were married 23 years.
Oh, really? Well, that's actually very long for that short kind of time.
Yeah,
of
well,
knowing one another
right.
before you get married.
Yeah.
That tip of the hat.
Yeah, but still, we were one of the first to ever break up.
How long were
You
your
know,
mom
in
and
the
dad? How long were your mom and dad married before they broke up?
I was, what, gee,
Yeah.
probably not as long, huh?
Right. What would you say is the most important thing about choosing a husband or a wife? Sort of what would be your advice?
Well, number one, bear in mind you're not going to change somebody. The big thing is to have really a lot of things in common. you might think that the religion is uppermost. And in my experience, it was helpful to me. And on the other hand, I've seen marriages where they're the same and it doesn't work out anyway. But having the same interests or so, education, so that you can respect each other. And it's I don't
think what you said is very true. Don't
respect.
You're not going to change.
That's right.
It's not going to get better. It can only get more complicated.
My daughter went through Cana Conference, and she was told it was not the right thing. But you know, the more you object, the more they fight it. But there again, see, there are things about our faith, Larry. I know you share the same faith I do. That made it real hard for young couples.
Right.
And my husband,
it still does.
My husband was a very staunch Catholic, and since my background was different than his, that I was always on the defensive. My mom and dad aren't going to go to hell because they got a divorce.
Right.
You know, but birth control, you don't even hear about it today. But in my day, it was like, oh, well, you know. So if you can't share the intimacies of marriage, that can be, I don't care how much money you have, that can be a problem.
Yeah.
And, but I don't know, I'm certainly not an authority. I come from a line of divorced people, my mother, myself, and my daughter.
Right. Did you get married after?
Yes.
Get married again?
Again, sort of, I can't say a bad thing about George. He was a widower, he was Catholic, and he was very kind to Maureen. They loved him, but I didn't recognize the fact that he was an alcoholic. And that just didn't work. And another thing, I think people should not marry for, like, I don't know, you think you're going to help somebody, whoever helps anybody, you know. You can't change them, right?
No, you really can't.
Yeah, and you know, if you love to ballroom dance and he wants to play tennis all day, those are things you never get together doing, do you?
When were your children born, and what are their names?
Stephen Lindsay Brennan Jr., 44, July 10th. James Thomas Brennan, January 15th, 48. Maureen Ann Kelly, April 8th, 54.
Her name is
Maureen Ann. Oh, Brennan.
Brennan, okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought maybe it was her confirmation name. She was Kelly Brennan Kelly.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I didn't give confirmation names, but Maureen Ann Brennan, yes.
Mm-hmm. I'd like you to think back to the day your first child was born. What was that experience like for you?
Well, Steve was overseas.
Oh, so you were alone.
For 18 months. Well, I was with my mom.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah.
Went home to live, yeah. And in those days, they had these little V-mails, did they call them?
What's it called?
V-mail.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Victory.
Your letters were all censored and everything. I believe he was almost a week old before his dad knew he was here. But, again, it wasn't unusual.
No. Were you in a hospital? Was it?
Oh, yes. He was born in Watertown, New York, and I believe it was Mercy Hospital. And because he was the pride and joy, my dear grandmother couldn't wait to hold him, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that her first grandchild?
Yes, because she had 3 children, and her son James passed away at 26. Mm-hmm. And Betty Hart, my mother's youngest sister, was her firstborn was 15 years younger than I, so okay. I had the first grandchild.
What are some special memories of raising your children?
Gee, I don't mean special memories. What would you mean by that? I was just telling Stephen a little story about when he was a little boy, and his father was so precise about pronunciation and everything, you know. And you remember cute little things that happened. Oh, I remember Stephen's nose was really out of joint when Jim was born.
Oh.
And
Crowd.
you know, somebody's taken his place. And we lived not too far from my mother's summer home. And one day I found Stephen getting ready to go outside. We were in used to be a Madison barracks during the war. They converted the barracks officers' quarters into residential apartments. So we were living in one of those. And downstairs, second floor. Anyway, he gets his little bag and he's walking out the door. And I said, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to Nana's." He had his bag filled with socks and penny bank. He was leaving home. Leaving home, can you believe it?
Because you didn't want him anymore, you had to move.
Oh, that's one of the memories of Stephen. And Jim was always the little fellow that was, you'd find him after the job was done. We used to kid about that. We're packing the car or something, and and he shows up. They adored Maureen. They just adored, yeah, they did. Yeah.
What do you think is the most rewarding thing about raising children, and maybe the most frustrating?
I think you have to live a long time before you feel rewarded.
Well, you've done that.
I know.
So you've reaped the rewards.
Isn't it
of
true?
your fruit. Yeah.
I mean, just think what they're doing for me today.
And how frustrating it was when they were little or teenagers.
I can remember standing in the kitchen at Oak Ridge Drive, looking out the window and saying, when is there ever going to be a day that I just do what I want to do? And then, as time goes by, you wish you had that day back.
Be careful what you pray for.
That's right, yeah. So, but of course, if you're fortunate enough to have children with good health and bright and have goals, my kids always had goals. They never gave up to be just ordinary, you know. I see that today with children that are overindulged, that they do not strive to be, it's too easy. And parents got in a stage where they wanted to be their friends and be a part of all this fun and games and social stuff and fill the house with people, but they lose control in parenting. Maybe I'm too critical of today's way of life, but I think I see it happening.
What is it like to be a grandparent?
I just told you.
To be a grandparent? I mean, well, you've got grandchildren now.
Yeah.
Them you get to send home at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think today it's hard to, the kids expect too much. You know, there's a word like, I don't think that you just, because you were born to the people that you have, what am I trying to say?
You have a right to.
Yeah, they don't seem to think they have to earn everything.
Right.
They're just, now I'm not saying specifically yours or mine, or it's just the world all over. Yeah. You just see these mothers not disciplining their children and well, when Maureen was taking dancing classes, and we lived in Syracuse
How old
area.
do you think she was?
Oh, she had to be tiny. She'd probably be third, fourth grade, really little. Her daddy could still pick her up, and she had her little ballerina outfit on and so on. So we're leaving, the performance is over, the recital, and her daddy's picking her up to carry her to the car. And it was storming like crazy, and she said, "Oh, hasn't this been a beautiful night?" You know, she was in her glory. Yeah.
There's a cute commercial, you've probably seen it on television, with a little boy playing soccer.
I love it.
And
I'm fabulous.
I was awesome.
Awesome, that's right, I was
That's the same
awesome.
guy.
Right, great, yeah.
All right, I want to move on to another thing here. Do you enjoy travel?
Oh, I love travel.
You know, where have you gone?
Well,
That you would,
out of the country,
yeah, the things.
my first trip was to Ireland.
Oh, wow. Did you go to Cork? Did you go-
Yep. I went to, my dad was born in Limerick, and that was quite an experience. Of course, there isn't any language barrier, but I'm rushing to get to the cathedral. I want to see where he was baptized. And I saw these two girls approaching, and I said, "Excuse me, could you tell me, am I on the right road to get to St. John's Cathedral? And what might you be going there for?" You know, they never answer. I always ask a question. I said, "Want to see where my dad was baptized, and what was his name? James McCarthy." "Oh, glory be to God, we're McCarthys." The two sisters were McCarthys.
Oh, so there's.
That was quite a little experience.
It is.
And then the next trip I took, I flew to Greece, and from Greece we went to Italy, we went to England, we went to Germany, and anyway, we did quite a bit of hopping around the countries there. I've been to England a couple of times, and then I took a trip to Copenhagen, Oslo, Norway, did the whole capital of Europe. They call it the capital tours. And so we did Germany, which I loved. It was really a beautiful country. I've been there a couple of times. Germany, we did Austria, we did Madrid.
What would you say was your greatest?
In Rome, of course.
Oh, yeah. Well,
That was a big thrill.
Yeah. Do you think that was your greatest stop?
Well, my most awesome feeling, you know, I went to confession at the Vatican. I said, wow, you know, and yeah. That was what now? I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
That was it. What would you say has been the greatest adventure so far?
The traveling, of course. I had hoped this year that I would be taking the kids on a cruise to the Panama Canal Zone, but it's not going to work out. But we had a lovely cruise, the family, 2 years ago on the Holland America.
Is that to Alaska?
Oh, I went to Alaska. I forgot about that. No, that was, they toured the Caribbean.
Oh.
But being all together was a very bonding experience,
Yeah.
because as you know today, everybody's living in another state and too busy to get together. And
When you're on a cruise ship, there's nowhere to go. The captain's driving, and
right, it was great. And then now I had hoped that I had discussed this with my children and said, I'd like you to want to put some money aside for you to use each year to get together for a trip. And it sounds wonderful, but as they say, now when are we all going to have the right time to go? So, but I want desperately for them to stay close.
Yeah. At this point in time, has your life turned out as you had imagined that it would?
Hardly. I don't think so.
No.
I don't think it turned out as no, I don't think you spend enough time really concentrating on what's important to you over the years. I mean, it depends on what you're striving to do, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As I said very recently, had I not moved from Fort Lauderdale to be up here with my mother 25 years ago, my life would have been very different. The best part of having come up was because I knew that in a sense she needed me, and I was there to enjoy her late years with her. But had I stayed, and that's when I started traveling, because I had sold my house in Fort Lauderdale, and I was approaching Social Security, and there was money to spend, use. And had I stayed in Fort Lauderdale, I am sure that I would be very much more comfortable wealthy-wise, because I was active in real estate.
Yeah.
And I was making good money. And had I stayed there, the drive would have been there, Harry. Sell that house, 6%, 7%, you know? And certainly I've gotten along better without it, and did all the traveling I've done. And so in a way, you know, I was guided
Yeah.
in the right path.
For a reason that way.
Yeah, I think so.
What has been your greatest accomplishment in your life, do you think?
My greatest individually, I couldn't say I could say any, except I just think I raised some good children.
Yeah.
That has to be my greatest. Who's going to remember me for what? Only my children.
Mm-hmm. What would you have done differently if you knew then what you know now?
What was then?
If you knew, you know, in your life, you know, things, well, I guess I kind of skipped over a question here, is what's been your greatest disappointment or frustration?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have remarried.
Okay.
That was, you know, that should never have happened. But what else? What can I regret? As my son Jim says, moms, don't look in the rear view mirror. Look ahead.
That's right.
So here we are, countdown time for Muriel. And I went out of my way today to talk to you.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Not out of my way, but I certainly was, there was a shock to see you walk in here today.
Well, I wanted to do this.
I know
wanted
you
to
did,
make sure that
Larry.
we could do it,
I
you know,
appreciate it.
and I'm glad that we were able to do it, you know. I just, if nothing else, and if you want, you know, later we can sit down and you can watch it, and
Sometime.
you know what's gonna happen, you're gonna watch it and you're gonna go, oh, you know what I forgot? Oh, you know
Oh,
what
yeah.
I should have said?
That's
you know, you
right.
can second guess
Oh,
yourself,
sure,
but don't
sure.
worry about it.
No.
What is your philosophy of life? You take
Well, late in the game, Larry.
Yep.
Late in the game, it's count your blessings. Because there's always a blessing. We just don't see them.
But they're crystal clear for you now, I would think.
Yeah. You can't help but have regrets, can you?
Oh, no, everybody's got regrets. I mean, that's.
Did we do enough? Did we say what we should have said?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're all human. I think you did a bang-up job.
Thank you.
Should be very proud. I think you're right. If the smallest of your legacies is your 3 children, then you're a king.
Yeah.
Well, this is really the end of this. I guess the next part is I'm gonna ask you a couple questions on advice you would have to future generations of your family. What advice you would have for great-grandchildren and area how about choosing, well, first, what advice do you have for your great-grandchildren in the area of getting an education?
Well, of course, we've been a fortunate family that everyone was able to get a nice education. For the future, the way things are today, people with PhDs don't seem to be getting rewarded for the investments they've made. So how can I say, and I have recently been made aware that single women should not sacrifice their savings to put their children through college.
Right.
So I only think that you don't really need to have the highest degree to make a good living. And
What would you say about choosing and managing a career?
choosing and
Choosing a
managing.
career, right. To your great-grandchildren.
Oh, my great-grandchildren.
Yes. What would you say to your great or your great-great-grandchildren about choosing a career?
Well, I think that they have had an opportunity that you or I never had. Mostly women didn't have. We didn't have very many choices.
Mm-hmm.
But my great-grandchildren can be anything they want to be if they want to do
That's
it.
very true. In your life, that's 180 degrees from
Right.
what it was, right? Because you were restricted by society.
Yeah.
What advice would you give about money to your great-grandchildren or your great-great-grandchildren?
Well, it's a cliche. It doesn't buy happiness.
Mm-hmm.
It helps along the way, I guess, to think you're happy. You need another toy every other month or something. But I'm reading your mind.
No, you're very much, well, we're kind of, we think the same way, that's why. What about love and marriage? Advice to your great-grandchildren?
I don't believe in free love.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe a woman should live with a man. I think without marriage, because I think she pays the price, referred to as used merchandise in my book. And I think everybody needs to be loved. Everybody seems to feel that I guess we all want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
But falling in love is different things to different people. If it's just sexual, it's not going to be the greatest. If it's real admiration and common, as we said before, it should work out well.
Any advice about raising children to your grandchildren? About them raising theirs?
Let them find their own mistakes.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
And be careful what you pray for.
How can we project ahead what's going to be, what our political life is going to be, and which chances we're going to have to do it the right way or the wrong way? But I do feel strongly that no matter what faith you are, have faith. Because if I were facing cancer now, without believing there was a higher power, it would be scary.
It's true.
And now I really have the feeling that I just pray, not for a cure, but I pray for the strength to handle it and not be a burden to the kids. And I sincerely mean that. But if I didn't have that crucifix I showed you, I would not have as strong a feeling.
Okay. Well, Muriel, probably all of the future generations of your family will view this tape at some point in their lives, and they get to meet you.
They'll say, "So corny, Nanny."
No, they're not. They're gonna. But since you have the opportunity right now, what personal message would you give to them, to the future generations that will get to meet you?
What advice would I give them regarding what?
Life, marriage, love. I mean, you've been in this earth for 85 years, and I think that you've certainly would have.
Well, I think possibly try not to be too self-indulged. I find along the way there are many opportunities I would have had to been more complimentary, to have encouraged people that I just slipped by. So I think that to just do the best you can. Every day's a challenge, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect personal message to your generations. Okay. That's the end of the interview. If there's anything you'd like to add or say, you got to take as much time as you want, but
I think we did enough of a job. What do you think?
I think you're dynamite.
Thank you, Larry.
I think this was very good, and I thank you for
Just
giving
make
me
sure the
time.
kids know I love them. That's it. That's the big message.
All right, good job.
My manager will get in touch with you in the morning.
Yeah, your people call my people, will you?